Hi everyone. In this video I'm going to talk about communication in the self. And just like the last video, I'm going to just go through some of the central concepts excuse me, that you'll want to know for this chapter. The sort of central theme of this chapter is that the more you know the yourself, the more able you'll be able to effectively communicate, and really the happier you'll be. The self is a really fluid concept, and it's constantly changing. Who you believe that you are today is not the same as who you believed you are when you were 8, or who you will believe that you are when you're 50, or 60, or 80, right? So it's going to change. And it's also going to change depending on context. Who you are for your parents is going to be different than who you believe that you are with your friends or your romantic partner. And really, the definition and key aspect is this idea of self awareness, the ability to reflect on your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, and to view yourself as a unique person distinct from your surroundings. Is something that developmentally happens as children, but is really, as an ongoing sort of understanding, is really important to have. And the component that's important here is the idea of a critical aspect of self-reflection. Of self-reflection. So the things that you want to ask yourself is, what am I thinking and feeling? Why am I thinking and feeling in this way? How am I communicating? How are my thoughts and feelings affecting my communication? And how can I improve my thoughts, feelings, and communication? So when you critically reflect on, for example, the animal choice that you made, in a simple exercise in your communication, interpersonal communication class, that is, in a very simple way, critical self-reflection. You can
Hello,
obviously...
everyone.
Oops, excuse
I
me.
would like to.
You can also do that in ways that are sort of more complex, right? How am I communicating in my interpersonal relationship, right? And what are the impacts of my communication on that relationship, right? It's going to be a little bit more in depth, but both rely on the same principle of critical self-reflection. And some central terms to understand within the concept of the self is our self-concept, which is our overall perception of who we are based on our attitudes, values, and beliefs that we have about ourselves. So our beliefs are, if for example, would be, I am an excellent skier. That is a belief about who I am. Attitudes, I like my haircut. That word "like" is indicative of an attitude, and then a value is sort of a broader understanding. So murder is wrong, right? That's going to be a larger construct that helps us form our self concepts. And other things that help us form our self concepts are gender, race, sexuality, ethnicity, culture. All of those things are going to be a fundamental part of how we form our sense of self. Gender is one of the first that we automatically assign at birth, probably because we don't know any of the other things besides race. So we really, the first thing we say is it a boy or the girl? And then from that moment on, we set sort of expectations and standards about behavior, or we attribute particular behaviors to gender. And this is going to affect what we call our looking glass self, the self that we see from our perception of how others see us. So others see us as a boy, right, or as a girl, and that's going to affect sort of how we see ourselves. It's difficult to change our self-concept once it's formed. This is particularly difficult when we have kind of a negative self-concept. We sort of see everything through that lens, and then it's very difficult to kind of break those patterns. And I'll talk a little bit about this, but that can contribute to, I'll talk a little bit about this in a few moments, but that is going to can contribute to what we call the self-fulfilling prophecy. Our early family dynamics are really going to affect our sense of self. So family affection. I talk a little bit in the lecture notes in your PowerPoint about gendered forms of affection. There's been a lot of studies on differences in how men and women show affection. One of the ideas is that, men simply are sort of deficit, are bad at showing affection, that women are better at showing affection and care. You can see that through kind of discourse about mothers versus fathers and all of those things, that women are just sort of essentially better at showing affection and care, which is, we've kind of moved away from that understanding in communication to really kind of say that there are the alternate paths model is what it's called, and where men and women simply show affection in different ways. And the importance here is that men and women are socialized to show affection in different ways. There's nothing sort of essential or nothing that anyone was born with that allows us to show affection in one way or the other. But we tend to encourage men to do things with people as a form of communication of affection. So let's go to the park, right? Versus women are socialized to really, show more direct forms of affection, like give you a hug. Individualistic and collectivist cultures are going to have different ideas about sort of the self and where you fit within that, so you'll want to understand those. And then the self-fulfilling prophecy, as I mentioned a little bit earlier in the video, is that we sometimes have predictions about future interactions that we're going to have that lead us to behave in particular ways that actually ensure that the interaction unfolds as we predict it. The easiest way to understand this is in a kind of negative way. So if we think, well, nobody likes me, right? So then we go to a party, and we have this idea in our head, nobody likes me. So every interaction that we have, we're going to pick through and we're going to find the sort of negative aspect of that communication, and we're going to say, see, nobody likes me. And in fact, one step further than that is we're going to say, nobody likes me. So we're going to actually engage in communication and behavior that's unlikable. So we're going to be kind of standoffish. We're going to be super defensive, right? Somebody says, I like your sweater. And we're like, we interpret that as sarcasm or something, right? And we're going to respond in, a sarcastic way. We're going to say, well, it's better than your sweater or whatever. That wasn't actually sarcastic, but maybe we're going to respond in an aggressive way, right? And so our communication choices that we're going to make are going to actually make people not like us. And so it's called the self-fulfilling prophecy. We engage in communication because we think that we understand that. We already know the outcome of the situation, and that's going to actually create the situation that we feared to happen. It really indicates the profound power of communication in our lives and the need to engage in critical self-evaluation. The other important concept to have in an understanding of the self is self-esteem. And this is going to be our overall value that we have to ourselves, and that can be positive or negative. And it's connected to really our emotional, physical, and psychological health. Obviously our self-esteem is going to impact all areas of our lives, but when I say like physical health, there's studies that actually show our self-esteem, the higher it is, the healthier we are as people. So you tend to exercise more when you have healthy self-esteem, and you're literally a healthier, happier person. So critical self-reflection and the ability to look at, okay, what is my sense of self? How does that affect my relational communication? How does that communication affect my relationships? And if you can reflect on that process and say, you know what, maybe I need to work on sort of my sense of self, you can actually affect how you affect your life in positive ways. And if you read the story about Zombie, you'll understand kind of how our communication choices sometimes can create unexpected outcomes for the better. One other thing I'd like to just focus on from this chapter is the social penetration theory. The idea that it's rooted in ogres are like onions, if you've ever watched Shrek. The self is like an onion, so the more you pull back layers, the more you can understand a person and the kind of deeper understanding that you get. So depth and breadth are two sort of central concepts in that. The outer layers are going to be kind of just like the breadth, right? Like sort of overall who you are as a person. But as you peel back the layers, you'll get to kind of the sort of the central aspects of who you are. And that's going to be your values, your really your self-awareness, your self-esteem. Whereas those outer layers are going to be more like your beliefs, or your attitudes about things. So your musical tastes, your political beliefs, things like that. And if you can understand sort of this sort of the social penetration theory and how that works, self-disclosure within that model is going to be an important way of understanding how we get close to people. So self-disclosure is, our revealing private information about ourselves, whether that's sort of the breadth, those our attitudes and our beliefs or our core values. You want to sort of follow some central self-disclosure guidelines so that you're not the oversharer on Facebook. But you want to ask yourself, know yourself, know your audience. Don't force other people to self-disclose. Don't presume gender preferences. Be sensitive to culture differences. And you want to kind of go slowly. You don't want to pull back all those layers of the onion all at once. You want to kind of peel them back slowly, layer by layer. And that's a way of getting to know other people through self-disclosure guidelines. All right, that's all for this video, and I will see you next time.